Is there a rodent study that you're aware of that shows that normal exposure, well, what's considered to be normal exposure to radio frequency radiation to mice or rats or some such thing, by the time you get to so many generations, you have complete sterility?
Yes, I do know about such a study. It's from Greece. And there were two scientists that were summoned by, I think, their government even, because they had seen among the Greek population of human beings that there was an increasing deterioration of health, various parameters. And they asked these two scientists if they please could investigate what was going on in Greece. And they choose a medium-sized town and started, and they were very detailed. They investigated everything, and asking people, interviewing them. They took different tests and so on. Um, and at the end of this pretty big investigation, they hadn't really found anything that could explain this increased deterioration of the human health. And then I heard an interview. They said that, well, one afternoon we stood on the town square and we looked around, and Greece contains a lot of mountains that are rather steep going up and down. And when they stood there, they saw what is called an antenna park on top of one of the ridges. And there were different antennas for cell phone communication, for radio, for television, and so on. And for practical reasons, you keep them together. You only have one road up there, one power line, and so on. It's very practical to do it that way. And then they stood there and thought, these antennas, could they have an impact on the human health? And I think they were like 2 kilometers away or something like that. They were quite far away. And it's easier than to use mice. And they studied the fertility parameters, and they looked at the first generation of children or babies, pups, and the second, the third, the fourth, and they didn't see anything really. But then they decided, and at that time, I could tell you they had a lot of mice because they had produced a lot of litter. But they decided to look yet another time. And then it turned out that by the fifth generation, the fertility had suddenly gone down practically to zero. And if you transform that to the human beings, not the mice, but to the human beings, both in Greece, in the United States, and in Sweden, it could mean that in 150 to 200 years' time, young people cannot get babies any longer because of something we did already during the 1990s. And then, of course, it's too late to call back like to 2025 and say, hey, please, could you stop exposing people and animals? Please stop it. They cannot do it. It's too late. We are all dead then, of course. But the future generations will stand at a very, very dark wall, realizing that "Mm, we cannot get any children any longer."
So this is just not an issue that can be put aside. There's a
No,
lot
no.
of there's a lot at
Yeah,
stake here, and
yeah, of course. And I also remember it was published in, should we call it, wireless industry friendly scientific journal, Bioelectromagnetics. And the editor at the time, he told me that when he got this manuscript, and an editor will then make copies and send to anonymous colleagues called referees, and they will read the manuscript and either say yes, it's good, or well, they need to add a few things, or no, it's not good at all. And they all said, no, this is very good, it's very interesting, you should publish it. But as an editor, he felt very insecure So he decided to do something called double refereeing, meaning he made another 5 copies and sent to another 5 colleagues, asking them, please, you have to look at this. There's something fishy here. This cannot be right. And these new 5 colleagues, they read it and they sent back their comments, and they were all, oh, this is very well done, very interesting, you have to publish it. And then he did it. He did publish the study. And It's interesting because I worked my whole life at the Karolinska Institute and the Royal Institute of Technology, and they are associated with the handing out of Nobel Prizes in physiology or medicine, chemistry, and physics. And so called double refereeing is rather common among Nobel laureate awarded findings, but very, very, very uncommon among ordinary science contributions. I'm not saying that these 2 guys will get the Nobel Prize. That's not what I say. But the authors, Magras and Senos, definitely drew attention. And later on, this was followed up by studies in test tube environments, as I said before, with sperm cells being exposed to cell phone radiation and so on. So a lot of pieces in this jigsaw puzzle fits together. Um, and I agree with you, Keith. This is definitely not you can turn your back on. And the question is actually, I mean, if I was the, well, what should we call it? The world leader, I would say to everyone, please, we need to turn everything off until we can establish that these exposures really are safe. And now we talk about the future for mankind. Don't forget all the other species, but also all the other facets. We talked about antibiotic resistance, we talked about the immune system activations, and so on, blood-brain barrier leakage, etc., 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 DNA damage. There are so many pretty serious effects that have been demonstrated both in laboratories but very often also already in reality. It's already here, it's already happening.